The reason most screenplays suck is because of this. The game of Jenga. If you pull too many pieces out from the bottom, the whole thing collapses. And here's the problem. Most writers are only focusing on this part. The top blocks might look important, but they're useless without a strong foundation. But here's the good news. You can fix this. Using this Jenga tower, I'm gonna show you how you can use Aaron Sorkin's writing process to bring your screenplay to a whole new level. But first, let's talk about the top of your tower. The plot structure. You've probably heard it before. Plot comes first. So you pick up Save the Cat or The Hero's Journey. But instead of easily building up your plot, you spend months in agony trying to force things together. Your plot is just the flashy part that everyone sees, but if you take it off, your tower isn't going to be affected as much as you think. Sure, you can plan the perfect inciting incident, midpoint, a climax, but if the blocks at the bottom aren't strong, the entire thing's going to collapse. And here's the truth, the blocks at the very bottom are often ignored by writers more than you'd think. Let me reveal them to you because they're the key to writing a screenplay that doesn't suck. Plot points don't just exist in a vacuum. I mean, think about it. All those elements in the hero's journey, they don't just happen randomly. Take the midpoint. What usually happens there? The stakes are raised, right? There's a plot twist or a false victory, but what's really going on at a deeper level? Let's look at some of the most famous midpoints. In The Social Network, Mark and Eduardo meet Sean Parker. In Hereditary, Joanne shows Annie how to talk with her dead daughter. And in Joker, Arthur watches Murray mock him on TV. What do all these moments have in common? They're not just random plot twists, they're moments that force the character to reevaluate everything that they've been doing up to that point. They're moments that fundamentally shift who they are and what they want. Does that make sense? And that's the first block on the bottom here, because that's true for all of your plot points. If you try to force your characters into these transformations without actually knowing who they are and what they want, your story will feel hollow, forced, and disconnected. And this happens just from these two blocks. So how do you create characters that actually move the plot forward without starting with the plot itself? Well, you can either click the link in the description below and work with me on this directly, or we can move on to the next block at the bottom of the tower. This block is the one thing that hooks anyone who's interested in your movie. Whether it's the agents reading your screenplay or a potential audience member scrolling through IMDb, it's the only reason they decide to give your story a chance. Think of The Social Network. An awkward teenager builds a revolutionary social platform. Or Star Wars, where a farm boy joins a rebellion to stop an evil empire in space. These stories all have one thing in common. They put these characters in these unique, high-stakes situations where they have to face a problem that they must solve. The audience gets invested because they want to see if the protagonist can work their way out. And this is the advice I heard from Aaron Sorkin. The idea is to nail your screenplay down to such a specific, unique situation that it makes people actually curious enough to read it. This is what makes a story compelling, not just great dialogue or clever themes, but a clear, specific predicament that gets people's attention and keeps them hooked.
It all boils down to intention and obstacle. Somebody wants something standing in their way of getting it.
Even Steven Spielberg says, if they can tell me the story in 25 words or less, I know it's going to be a great story. But what makes these situations so effective? Well, let's break them down and see how you can use the same principles in your own screenplay. For Star Wars, hearing a farm boy or a rebellion to stop an empire on their own, they don't spark much excitement. But when you combine them, a farm boy joining a rebellion to stop an evil empire in space, suddenly, no one's ever seen it before. Well, like 50 years ago. The same is true for Shawshank. A wrongfully convicted man in prison, not too groundbreaking. But a man finding hope and freedom inside this prison, I mean, that immediately raises questions. Like, how could anyone possibly do that? What's great about having a clear sentence like this is that if you can do it right, you can use it to drive every single word in your screenplay. If there's something in there that doesn't serve this one sentence, it can probably be removed. And that's where the magic comes. When you create a situation with clear stakes and obstacles, the audience automatically starts to imagine what your protagonist might face. Aaron Sorkin puts this best.
Something formidable is standing in their way, and the tactics that that character uses to overcome the obstacle is going to define who the character is. It's like having a Christmas tree and then hanging ornaments on it.
These foundational elements can carry your entire screenplay. And if you don't believe me, just watch what happens when I remove intention and obstacle from the Jenga tower. You gotta be kidding. Okay, there we go. You might obsess over dialogue, theme, or plot structure, but those are just byproducts of your characters exploring the situation you've put them in. Shane Black describes this perfectly.
Doing that much plotting and work and sort of, it's like saying to someone, how do you play hopscotch? And instead of trying to teach you how to jump, they spend an hour on diagramming the sidewalk,
Focus on crafting a unique, compelling situation for your characters, and the rest of the story will follow. Maybe you haven't tried writing a screenplay without meticulously planning every single detail. You're used to mapping out every scene, every beat, every plot twist, and yet it still feels like something is missing. Well, what if I told you that there's a better way? A system that lets you write with total freedom while still creating a cohesive, compelling story. Click this video here to learn how to write a screenplay without an outline and finally unlock your creative potential as a screenwriter.